Just give me a thumbs up or a yes, no from anyone that's here. Okay, you sound good to me. Slides look good to me. Great. Thanks, Tyler. All right, I'll go ahead and get started. All right, so today's topic, of course, is around building a school cyber lab. We know that there's very little participation, or there's not many schools that have a true cyber program as it relates to, K through 12 for our high schools in the STEM program. And in fact, here in Fulton County Schools, where I'm here in this district, we don't have a cyber lab. However, we have a cyber program where we include students, of course, hire them as interns leading up to the pandemic of last year to join us over what we refer to as our summer clean, summer refresh, because we are a one-to-one school. So I'll go into telling you about a little bit about Fulton County Schools, our district. So Fulton County Schools, first of all, I'm the Director of IT Security here at Fulton County Schools. Fulton County has a total of 106 schools that span over 70 miles, North and South Fulton County here in the Atlanta metro area. We have approximately 94,000 students enrolled in our district and 14,000 employees. And we have approximately 140,000+ devices on our network. And of course, 68,000 of those are one-to-one for middle and high school, and 1 to 3 for elementary schools. In other words, 1 device to every 3 students for elementary. Now, of course, those numbers changed as of last year. When the pandemic hit, we was at a rush to get more devices in students' hands. The last I checked, we have approximately 89,000 devices assigned to students now. The majority of those devices are Windows devices. We are a Windows school. We are Office 365 platform. However, we still support Apple devices and Chromebooks. The plan is to eventually phase those devices out and go full Windows platform, because as you know, as education leaders and support personnel in K-12, you can't support everything. We don't have the funding, nor do we have the people. We have approximately 10,000 wireless access points to light up our district. So everything is pretty much Wi-Fi. But the key part is that last bullet here, which is why there's a shortage in cybersecurity professionals. We only have 200 IT department staff members total to manage this entire environment. Of those 200, there's only 3 on my team, myself and 2 security analysts. So why should we invest in cybersecurity, in cyber education? Well, obviously, it touches everybody. We've seen the news over the last year, 2, 3 years, and as you know from K-12 leaders, K through 12 has become a target. Not just K-12, everything that we touch in our lives has a technology focus. If it have a technology focus, there's information. As you recall, back in the 80s and the late 90s and early 2000s, all of us was ramping up our infrastructure to get to the internet. Now that everything's on the internet, we got to do what? We got to now protect it. These attacks have increased. I mean, over the past decade, information is king. And one thing that I have recognized working with students here in the district, that generation don't mind sharing their information. Everything is out there. Everything they do, they put their leave the digital footprint out there. But we know how important it is to protect that information, because that information is sold on the black market and is sold for a pretty penny. Do we have a shortage? Oh, yes, we do. Prime example, I had interviewed 2 contractors to come in and assist us during the winter break. Both contractors declined because, one, districts just don't pay the money that they make on the private market. And there's a lot of money out there for cyber security professionals. In fact, I get hits almost every week, but You know, if I was 10 or 20 years younger, I'll be looking at that market as well. But I'm satisfied, and I love what I do because it's meaningful to me day to day to come in and know that I am protecting our students. I'm protecting the digital, the district's information versus is based on the dollar figures that we make day to day, because we don't make money. K through 12 is not a profit generating organization. We're here to educate students. And of course, one of the things that we can help our students with and in their career is of course building these cyber labs to train them in order to I just see a note that I need to maximize my PowerPoint. Hold tight. Let me put it in presentation mode to see if that helps. I won't be able to see the notes once I put this in presentation mode. So Tyler, if you don't mind, just let me know from an audio if it's better. Can you guys see this?
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay.
We use switch your displays because this is the presenter, the back end view, but you're in presenter mode. But I think if you just swap the displays, if you have two set up.
Okay, let me see. Can I do this? All right, what are you seeing? Is it okay? Or
now we're seeing the Hopin website and the screen share. We're kind of seeing the Hopin page that you're looking at now.
all right, let's try this again. You're seeing, are you seeing the presenter mode or what? What are you seeing?
We're seeing the presenter, like the presenter mode that has like the slide and then the next slide on it, and then like what the notes would be.
I see. Okay. All right. I see what I'll have to see. Can I move this around somehow? I don't know.
Camila has the solution at the top. Derrick, if you click display settings back in that PowerPoint.
Uh-huh. Ah, there it is. I see it now. How about now?
So we're looking at the Hopin page right now. But if you go back to PowerPoint, maybe.
Okay, hold on. Let's see. Can I move these around? Don't want to stop sharing. You still seeing the Hopin page?
Yeah, still seeing the Hopin page. Yeah.
Working like I want it to.
Of course, poor Brian is watching, and I know that he's like, we tested it and everything. Let's see. There we go. Oh, there we go. Perfect. Perfect.
You got it now?
All right.
Okay. Yeah, I had to move them around on my displays. Okay, cool. So what did I leave off? Why invest? As I stated, you know, it touches everyone. And of course, the intrusions have increased dramatically over the past decade. And we see this every day. We see this every day in our lives. We see it in our work. We, of course, see it in the news. As you know, recently, and I'm sure many of you who are on this session, you utilize SolarWinds. Many of you are Windows, of course, platforms and Google platforms and so forth. Of course, in the new pandemic era, we got accustomed to use, as we're doing here, the Hopin platform, Zoom, which of course came up with the new term of Zoom bombing, because the hackers know that the K through 12 districts rely on technology in this remote learning mode. And of course, they would do anything to disrupt our lives. And of course, this is for everybody, not just for K through 12. This is just what we've seen. And of course, as I stated earlier, there's a shortage of cybersecurity professionals. And of course, as a result of that, we need to train more of them. We need to get them prepared for, you know, what's coming down the pipe. Of course, 20 years ago, as I stated, there was a shortage in infrastructure, network engineers. Now that has shifted. The networks have grown, they have matured. Now we got to protect what's going across the wire and, of course, across the cloud. As we think about our cybersecurity skills focus areas, there are several areas now that our students can actually focus on. Unlike when I transitioned from the network side into security, only thing I did was manage a firewall, and I was considered the security guy. Well, today that has grown. There are several areas of cybersecurity that these students can be trained or decide they want to go towards. For instance, you got the compliance side, which is real big now, especially in government, because what they're doing, they're performing audits to make sure that, you know, these government facilities have the structure in place to protect their information, as well as following the compliance protocols, you know, in terms of day-to-day use of technology. Of course, the biggest one, everybody know about being a cybersecurity analyst. You know, this is your day-to-day monitoring, investigation, resolving security incidents, watching alerts, and responding to them. And of course, security administrators. Now, security administrators themselves, they could play several roles. There are security administrators at the system level when we refer to our servers that are on-prem, servers that are now, because the cloud has grown tremendously over the last 5 years, and everybody seems to be moving towards these data centers, these cloud structured data centers. I can most likely, who knows, 20 years from now, they might bring it back on-prem. But right now, the focus now is towards the cloud. So you have security administrators for cloud infrastructure, on-prem infrastructure. You have security administrators that manage endpoints. You think about our environment when you're talking about 140,000 endpoints that we're responsible for. We have a team that are considered endpoint device management team, where they still have to follow specific security protocols in their day-to-day. And of course, you have network security, securing your switches, your routers, your infrastructure, to making sure those are sound and tight, that they're not infiltrated by someone outside or within your trusted environment. You also have design architects. Some people like to design security. These are mostly, you know, students who have been administration roles or analyst roles, who also have a strong background of network. If you have a strong background of being a network engineer, you might want to focus on the area of a security architect, designing the environment for the cloud or on-prem infrastructure. And of course, the one throat to choke when something go down, Chief Information Security Officer. This is the person who oversees and makes sure the policies, procedures, and, you know, provide vision and leadership for the technology department. However, they still have to have a mindset of keeping their environment secure. When I think about any of these roles or any of your day-to-day duties when it comes to cybersecurity, when we teach our students to understand and of course be the best that they are and have a passion for cybersecurity, there are certain protocols that don't change, certain priorities. Well, this graphic here that I have in front of you, you would never get away from this model. You got to have some type of incident management response program, and that's essential to all cybersecurity roles. You don't want to be up 24/7 fighting fires, so you got to have some type of prevention measures. If you have prevention measures in place, you're still going to have things to slip through the crack. When something slips through the crack, they have to understand. You got to have detection measures in place to detect those incidents that do slip past your monitoring features. Once that detection phase and you see that something has occurred within your environment, that security professional must understand how to analyze it, not just analyze what happened, but also understand what they can do to make sure it doesn't occur again. I remember in the past years, you know, we have a network situation, a server situation. First ask, well, let's reboot it, let's restart it. Well, that's not fixing something. What that's doing is just clearing out, but it's going to come back and haunt you again. And of course, when you have an incident management response program in place, you must also know how to respond to these incidents and, of course, react to them. And, of course, do your final analysis. So, of course, that everyone understands that what happened and prevent it from happening again. The other thing that comes to mind in my role, I always got to think about privacy. And you want your students to be able to be creative. If you don't give them access to everything to be able to test out true hacking against each other, or hacking labs, or using sniffing programs to look at data, you're not doing them a just service in understanding and being, of course, creative. So one of the things I would always suggest, if you move to creating a cyber lab, you need to isolate that lab from the rest of your K-12 environment. We know that we have FERPA and CIPA regulations that we have to adhere to. So some of the things that you might want to think in, you know, when you're doing this, have that physical separation. You know, you need to get your leaders to understand that, hey, if we're going to do this, it's not that costly to have a separate internet connection, depending on where you guys are located. Some people may be in, you know, in areas where you may not have choices of internet service providers. But if you do have a choice of internet service providers, you might want to invest in making sure that lab has a direct connection to the internet. Separate that from your everyday academics production network. The other thing that you have to do is monitor your students. You have what they call white hat hackers, black hat hackers, and gray hat hackers. Those ones in between, not really sure what they want to do. Those that maybe, well, I've tested everything I can do at home because I'm limited. But you know what? I want to try and see what I can really infiltrate on the school network. You got to know your students. You got to know the intentions. So you want to make sure that these students are monitoring. You're monitoring these students and tracking what they do, so they adhere to your code of ethics that you have in your school environment. And last but not least, before I turn it over to Darryl and Tyler and, of course, Matthew to give you more details, because they do have experience and have set up these cyber labs, think about the different options you have. You might want a hands-on physical lab, which, of course, you know, they'll talk more about how you can go about resourcing that, you know, extra equipment. Let those kids build that environment, because we learn by doing. This gives you that hands-on, of course, approach experience, that touch feel. Personally, I don't learn by just, you know, reading a manual, a theory. I've got to touch it. Just like you can't teach someone how to drive a stick shift if they don't get behind the wheel and play with that clutch and stick shift. That's just the way it is. Virtual labs. You have virtual lab simulations. These are fast. You can easily spin them up. They're basically a simulated system, but it does not give the kids that hands-on experience approach. It's a lab that's already built for you. And of course, you can only just simulate things that the lab provides you. But at least it's a segue into creating a cyber lab. It's one of the options. And of course, you have cyber ranges, which is basically also a simulated network, but within what we refer to as sandbox, a built environment where you can just tear it up and go after each other, but you still miss that physical presence of being able to build it from scratch. So that, what I try to do here is, of course, give you an overview of some of the things to start thinking about when you're creating these cyber labs. and options that are here for you. And so with that said, I'll turn it back over to Tyler. And of course, we'll go from there.
Thanks, Derrick. I'm glad that I have sorted out my ability to kind of hear you and talk to you. So Batavia just put a question in the chat. How do I convince our county IT to allow us to have a network within a network? For CTSOs, this would be great to have.
Well, first thing, you talk to them about the risk. Think about the risk of not having that. If I'm understanding the question, now I can get back to the chat. Hold on, let me scroll down, and I can see the questions. I have a network with them. Okay, so if you're going to do this, think about the risk if you only have one network. Explain to your leaders, so hey, we want to expand our CTE program or our STEM program to allow students to train in a cyber lab environment. But you don't want them on that same network that you use day to day, because one mistake could bring down the entire school, and you don't want that. But if they're actually supporting your school and want to build a cyber lab, I definitely suggest separating those two. And think about it, when you say networking a network, well, how much does it really cost to get you a nice connection to Comcast, AT&T, if that's available in your area, as just a connection to the internet? Because you're not doing production on it, you're actually using it and for testing purposes. And of course, you need it to be open so you can see the bad stuff that comes across the internet. Does that answer your question?
While we wait for that confirmation, Derrick, we've got a few more questions. Yeah, Brian, I agree with you. So Coach Higgy and Justin, those two questions that you shared are going to be great for Darryl's team. Darryl or someone from that Richmond County team, I don't know if you're on yet. I'm just happy to have audio, so I'm trying not to do too much and hop in and get too creative. So go ahead and let your presence be known if you're here. Batavia also asks, can we have it without the internet? Oh, sorry, that may have been more of a statement. Derrick, can you interpret that last comment there from Batavia?
Hold on, let me go.
Can we have it without the internet access? Yes, it does.
You said, can you have a cyber lab? Well, I was on people trying to check to see if the other guys, can we have it without the internet access? Well, if you have it without internet access, and Darryl and Matthew can really speak to more this, because I think this is from my discussion with them, they have already gotten to this point. You can build a nice little LAN, local area network. If you can resource equipment, and Darryl and those will give you some tips on how to do that. If you can resource some switches, some routers, a couple of servers, of course, some endpoints, which is just some low-end desktops, you got you a local area network. The problem is you won't be able to create a true wide area network unless you go beyond your school and have connection to the internet. So yes, they can get hands-on on being, building a network, but can you really do a lot of cyber related training without having that connection to the internet? In a sense, you can. Well, Darryl and those will tell you about, they even train on using sniffers. They will learn how to do packet capturing. Once you capture packets, they can be taught how to break, and that's a good training for someone who want to go down the path of a cyber security network specialist.
So Derrick, this question isn't really from the chat. It's more from me. I'm just curious, having talked to you, having talked to Darryl, and sat in this morning in the keynote, and I'm thinking about, especially in Georgia, right, with the expansion of computer science courses kind of throughout the state, particular areas where, a school might be hard pressed to find multiple qualified folks in technology. How can tech support staff support teachers who are going into teaching these courses, whether it's like the IDT course in high school or it's one of these more cyber focused courses, either at the middle or high school level? How can the tech support staff play a role in kind of supporting the teachers and in teaching, right? Knowing that they might have some pedagogy pieces, they might have some content knowledge, but that tech support person might actually know a little bit more in some of those domains. What are your thoughts on that?
They're gonna definitely need that tech support person in a lot of cases. And two, you have tech support personnel within the schools that want to grow themselves. So of course, if they have a desire to grow into that area, and they have a platform where they can not only assist the teachers in teaching students, but also practice their own to grow their own skills, that's a benefit for both of them. The other thing too, don't overlook those students. I think the next panel discussion that we're on, that I'm going to be on, I'm going to speak more about take advantage of the skills that these students have. This new generation, I'm telling you, they are bright. They, as the keynote speaker spoke about this morning, they grew up with technology. I didn't. I started with technology back in Coleco days. I'm sure you're probably not old enough, Tyler, to know what a Coleco is, but that's that was the knockoff Atari Pong system back in the late 70s. That was my first introduction to technology. And of course, swapping out 8-track tape players from cars and putting in cassettes. That's what led me into this technology path. So take advantage of that hungry student, but you still got to balance that between, okay, what the intentions are. Students in those STSs can help you a lot in that area.
I mean, I think, that's great to think about. I know that, I taught for years over in Gwinnett County, and I started at a STEM and technology academy, and certainly there was a lot of really bright students that you can engage with, and it's kind of like, as you said, like that white hat versus that gray hat, and nudge them towards the direction that you want them to go in, because if you don't give them something to do, they're going to find something to do, and it might not be something you really are happy with in the end.
We have our director of our current director of networking. Well, he's not director, I'm sorry, he's our network coordinator. They busted him hacking when he was in high school in our system. He now works for us, okay? They can't beat him, join him. Simple as that.
There you go.
You turn him into a good guy,
Justin, there, right? Justin put in the chat, Derrick, I don't know how familiar you are with it. I know we've got a panel at 2 p.m. in this track that's going to have Eric Toller from over in Augusta, who I believe manages the Cyber Patriot program over there. But Justin put, has anyone participated in Cyber Patriot, and is it a valuable tie-in to computer science for Georgia students?
Yeah, I'm not familiar with it.
I'm a little on the outside as well, but Justin, I would encourage you to tune into that 2 p.m. panel, because I know we're going to have folks on there who are going to be really knowledgeable about Cyber Patriot. And I see Brian wants to join us. So Brian, come on up to the stage, I suppose.
How's it going, everybody? We're having a little bit of difficulty with the folks out in Augusta. They're attempting to log in. But later on this afternoon, we're going to talk about Cyber Patriot as well as the Cyber Start America, 2 competitions that are related to the IT and the cybersecurity fields. Again, Eric will have a lot to say about that than I do. But from what I hear, we have some very successful teams in Georgia. And I personally am a huge champion of gamification of education. So getting involved in competition really helps to stimulate student interest in whatever the topic is. So specifically for cyber and the IT fields and networking, Cyber Patriot and the Cyber Start America are excellent avenues to get your students to be interested and involved in your program. But yeah, Georgia Cyber Center will have a lot more to say about it.
So this is at 2 o'clock, you say, Brian?
Yes, that one is the last one for this track, 2 o'clock.
Okay, I'll try to join that one as well. Okay, let's listen in on it.
And I know, it looks like April and Delta are vouching for Cyber Patriot. So sounds like that'll be a good session to learn more about that program. Brianna, thanks for your comment about like creating a co-teacher environment or a co-teaching environment with tech support and certified teachers would be awesome. I agree. That would be really cool to see. I'd be super interested in exploring if there's any case studies, maybe not written up, but just kind of, exist here in the state where that's being done. And if not, encourage folks to kind of explore that in their own schools. Justin, so Justin has another question. Would you consider Cyber Patriot to be a cyber range? Brian, I don't know if that's a question that's kind of something you might know.
I mean,
just explore that at 2 p.m.
I know a little bit, but yeah, Eric will have more of that about that at 2 p.m. So cyber range is more like a facility set up to engage in cyber games, such as Cyber Patriot. But you can use the cyber range to do training for your class or things like that. Again, the Georgia Cyber Center will have more on that coming. And I wanted to mention that I've had some conversations, and I'm trying to get Tyler to do some background on, because I got an offer from Georgia Tech to be one of the locations that will set up sandboxes for your schools. But there are some different organizations, higher ed institutions that will set up sandboxes for your schools to help you do cyber lab inside of your school, so that you can operate and play and penetrate without really endangering the overall school system.
Monty has a great question there. Has a thought been given to partnering with IT companies in today's virtual environments? Yes. If I'm not mistaken, I know Microsoft and Cisco has been partnering with K-12 institutions for quite a while, especially since STEM has become the new vocational tech these past few years, in terms of the Microsoft certifications, as well as going down the path of receiving their CCNA and the certifications that Cisco offers, because they realize, that is a wealth of new professionals coming out of that area. And also, not only is it a wealth of professionals, they noted that once they work with K through 12s, it might benefit them to get some of that business. So it's a twofold side of it that these IT companies are looking at.
Paul, there's that last session at 2 p.m. Tracy is going to be talking about a program called Microsoft Teals. It's their philanthropy arm, where they work with IT and CS professionals to partner with your teachers in the school to help them learn the content as they begin to develop a program. So there's a very strong push to further develop and have more Teal schools in the state of Georgia. And they don't just work with Microsoft, they get professionals from your local area, all sorts of companies through the Teals program. And they just started to support cybersecurity as well. So, but Tracy will say a lot more about that too.
Yeah, that too, it'll be jam-packed, it sounds like.
I'm gonna have to join that too.
We're gonna learn about Teals and Cyber Patriot. There we go.
Yeah.
So, Derrick, I'm gonna kind of ask a few more questions, because I'm just really interested. I know that like when I was preparing to kind of moderate this session, I was talking with somebody who used to teach high school and now works at Georgia Tech Research Institute in cybersecurity. And she was just mentioning a lot of the things that you could do, kind of as you were alluding to, right? Things that you can do to teach these concepts that aren't network based, but aren't even necessarily maybe like computer based. And especially thinking about, the middle school course versus the high school course, do you see that kind of happening in Fulton County, where you're kind of having some activities condensed around that middle school or that introductory level that are a little more low tech versus maybe what's happening at the high school?
What I've seen since I've been here, and of course last year the pandemic just changed everything. Prior to the pandemic, several schools would offer what they refer to as coding competitions. And we've had students as young as fifth graders. When I see a fifth grader coding, it blows my mind. But I'm seeing that's a big thing now, because that age group, the first thing they're accustomed to is an app on their phone. So now they want to get into either coding apps or coding games. So I can see that middle schooler actually getting into, as a good start for them, because that's what I've experienced here. Anything beyond that, I haven't seen anything other than that. But I thought that was great, because some of the applications these kids came up with was just phenomenal. I never would think that age group could, had that much experience, but you think about it. You know, they got time on their hand. They grew up, they live with that device. So some of the students are more interested in just as a use purpose. That's like, I wonder how this works. Kind of like I was when I was a kid. I broke everything, but didn't have any money to buy anything else, so I had to figure out how to fix it. So, and that's what they're doing.
Chris had a good question. Georgia's Intro to Cybersecurity course standards require some significant hands-on configuration of network components, operating system servers. Would it be possible for a course to meet those requirements using a lightweight virtual abstraction, or do we have to set up real components or use cyber ranges?
So that's why I wish Darryl was, because that's what Darryl and those guys have done down in Augusta. He spoke about cyber range, but if I recall, they actually get into the nuts and bolts of building that lab from scratch. From what I understood from talking to him, they don't set up nothing. They give them the equipment, they give them the cables, they do everything from crimping cables, understanding the wiring of an Ethernet Cat6 cable in the right color code. So they had to crimp cables, set up their patch panels, everything from configuring the switches and routers and setting up VLANs and routing different VLANs. And I think one of the people in the chat asked, can you do this without the internet? And those are some of the things you can do without going to the internet. You can have your own little routed network using that. And if you think about it, the equipment that your schools are getting rid of when they're refreshing this type of equipment, don't let them throw it out. It's still usable. You can do that. And so, yes, that's a great intro for oh, my man is here to tell you more about that. I'm in his area. What's up, Matthew? Welcome. So Matthew, I'll let Brian introduce Matthew because he can give you a great introduction of what these guys have already done.
Right,
Yeah,
go ahead, Matt.
Yeah, it was. I'm not Hopin is something I've used 3 times, so it was like, okay, get back in. Okay, do you remember how? Sure.
Well, I'm glad you made it in.
I've wanted to do this for a long time, so this is fun stuff for me.
I don't know if you have a presentation, or we definitely have some questions in the chat that refer directly to you, but I'm gonna get out the way and let Tyler moderate this.
All right, let me slide this over.
Good, yeah.
I am going to share this. I hope.
Don't feel bad, man. I had a hard time. I did this last week on the
I'm used to Microsoft Teams. I'm used to Microsoft Teams. This is
yeah, I'm a
we are we're 3 for 3 on the tech issues with the presenters here.
So if somebody accepts me, I can get in there as well. This is Darryl.
Oh yeah, here.
Hey,
let me go ahead, Darryl. Let me find you on the list here. And while we're doing that, of course, y'all, if you have any more questions, again, thinking about Derrick talked a lot about kind of all the things you got to think about. Darryl, if you go if you mouse over on our screen in the presenters up in the upper right, there should be a request to share audio video. Click on that, and then you're going to pop up for me, and I'll be able to give you the green light. But thinking about kind of all the questions that were coming up here towards the end, just how do you do it, right? Yeah, how do you go from the stuff that's networked to networked and so on? Brian, I'm gonna let you back in.
I'm almost about ready to get started.
Okay.
I'm trying to share out this PowerPoint presentation through Hopin. So if I could, somebody know how to do that.
So Matthew, at the bottom where it has the screen with the line through it, that's how you share. We're getting pretty close to the end of time for this session. What I may want to do is kind of schedule a follow-up after the summit where I can get you and your team to kind of do a presentation, because I think this is a very important conversation and you got some valuable information to share.
Would it be okay if I answer some of these questions I'm seeing come up?
I think that'd be the best thing, because that was a lot of the questions that was starting to come up is right in your wheelhouse about, ways of setting these labs up. And And really, it was around what you and Darryl, you guys have already done with your students down there on getting started from scratch. So go right ahead.
I'll just start. I'll just start with this one I saw first from April Pelfrey. We use Test Out Network Pro for the lab simulation versions of this because we don't have a cyber lab. We try the best. We tried the best to do as many hands-on activities as we can. That Derrick just mentioned, but Test Out is great for. Actually, that's not impossible. If I had been here earlier, and I apologize for that. I built my hands-on lab for $1,000. It has 2 layer 3 switches managed. It has 2 standard unmanaged switches, a patch panel, a rack, a desktop rack. Now, not one of the big roll-around ones. A couple of cheap $25 routers. Just for $1,000, and if you take those layer 3 switches off, you get the idea of being able to create that hands-on lab, and you can just root around the internet for some instruction sets that meet your standard capabilities there that you're looking to use them on. And I have 2 of them together. That was $1,000. I think somebody mentioned about making cables, and let me take that a step further. I like the idea of making cables as part of the standard. It gives them some hands-on activities on top of that. But I strongly suggest the patch panels. I tell my students that when they get out there into the real world, making cables is not something that your standard, typical, everyday cable jockey is going to do. He's going to use patch panels. They're going to make some cables on occasion, which is a great idea. But patch panels, and I even have a lab over here where I use a tone generator. That tone generator allows that. I took a bundle of 15 cables, I cut one of the cables and hit it within the bundle. And one of the exercises they have is to find a broken cable using a tone generator.
One more. There's a question about one. How many cyber labs do you have in your school system? And do they operate on the same network, which is separate from the school's network? Like just thinking about
they operate. Mine's a sandbox. I do not have mine connected to the school network. With the 2 desktop racks that I'm using, I was able. And one of the things that was on my here we go. Awesome. One of the things that was important to me was to become friends with the IT department. In becoming friends with the IT department, I was able to get 2 old but still functional servers. Ubuntu server is free. A GNOME overlay allows you to put a GUI on it so the kids can work on that too, students. And now you have a fully functional 2-server network that goes back and forth that you can work with on that. And I was able to find some old out of the loop laptops that they gave me, so I can use them as workstations, both wired and wireless technology.
Well, I hear a lot of support for us doing a follow-up. So Matthew, I may be in touch with you to
Not a problem.
beg your support for that. Tyler, I'm gonna let you go ahead and close this out and let me know.
Yeah, Brian. Yeah, no. Thanks for helping out there, Darryl. Sorry, I see it now there in the bottom. But Derrick, Matthew, Darryl, thanks for your time this morning and time of preparation. I know that we've got a lot of other questions and a lot of other interests. So hopefully we'll be able to kind of get everybody back together to talk more about the specs and the details and walk through things with maybe a little bit more granularity. But with about 3 minutes left, if there's any other questions, feel free to kind of drop them in the chat. If for no other reason, that way we can kind of just tally them up and save them for the future, hopefully for that follow-up, that trail on meeting. But again, I'm a layman in this regard. I learned a lot kind of in all of our conversations leading up to now, and learned a lot this morning, and really appreciate everybody kind of coming together to share their expertise. So thank you.
And we appreciate you for pulling this together.
And then, of course, for everybody, you know, we talked a lot about that 2 p.m. session, but there's a lot of sessions between now and then in the IT track and in the other tracks. So I encourage you to go back to that sessions tab on the left and join us for the next one coming up here in just a little bit. So
All right.
thanks again.
Bye now.